The stars had never seen anything like it before, and they probably never would again. Admiral Zyverth stood at the center of his command bridge, his forearms clasped behind his back as he watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. 12,000 warships stretched across the void of space like a swarm of hungry predators waiting to feast. The Corvani Dominion had spent 300 years building this armada, and now it was finally complete. Every ship was armed with weapons that could turn entire continents into glass. Every crew was trained to kill without mercy or hesitation, and every commander had sworn an oath to crush anyone who dared to stand against them. Zyverth himself had led the conquest of 47 worlds. He had watched civilizations burn and heard the screams of billions as they realized that resistance was meaningless. He had never lost a single battle, and he never intended to start. Admiral, his second-in-command, spoke from the navigation station. "We are approaching the Althean system. Arrival in approximately 2 standard hours." The Admiral allowed himself a thin smile. The Altheans were a peaceful coalition of 7 different species who had foolishly believed that diplomacy and cooperation could protect them from the realities of the universe. They had no real military, no weapons of significance, and no allies willing to die for them. They had been given a simple choice: join the Dominion as servants or be destroyed. They had chosen to refuse, and now they would pay the price for their arrogance. "Excellent," Zyverth replied, his voice echoing across the silent bridge. "Prepare all weapons and inform the fleet that we will begin orbital bombardment immediately upon arrival. I want the Althean homeworld burning within the hour." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had done this many times before, and they would do it many times again. This was simply another world to conquer, another species to crush beneath the weight of Corvani supremacy. Commander Thale, the Admiral's most trusted officer, approached with a data tablet in his clawed hands. He was younger than most of the senior staff, but he had proven himself in dozens of campaigns and had earned his position through skill and brutality. "Admiral, I have reviewed the tactical assessment of the Althean defenses," Thale reported. "They have a small orbital defense grid, but it is outdated and poorly maintained. Our ships will destroy it within minutes. After that, there will be nothing standing between us and complete victory." Zyverth nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly what he had expected. The Altheans were soft creatures who valued art and science over warfare. They had spent centuries building libraries and hospitals instead of battleships and weapons platforms. Now they would learn the terrible cost of their peaceful philosophy. "The Dominion will add their territory to our empire," the Admiral declared. "Their people will serve us, and their resources will fuel our continued expansion. This is the natural order of the universe, and no amount of diplomatic protests will change it." The fleet continued its approach, moving through the darkness of space like a tide of destruction that nothing could stop. Behind them lay the ruins of 347 conquered star systems. Ahead of them lay the trembling hope of the Althean people, who were about to discover that hope was not enough to save them. 2 hours passed, and the Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Althean system. The tactical displays lit up with information about orbital stations, communication satellites, and the homeworld itself, beautiful blue and green planet that would soon be covered in fire and ash. "All ships report ready for combat operations," the communications officer announced. "The fleet is awaiting your command, Admiral." Zyverth opened his mouth to give the order that would begin the slaughter. And then everything changed. The communications officer suddenly sat up straight, her scales turning pale with an emotion that Zyverth had never seen in any member of his crew. She pressed her hand against her earpiece, as if she could not believe what she was hearing. And when she spoke, her voice cracked with something that sounded almost like fear. "Admiral," she said slowly, "we are detecting an incoming vessel. Single ship, approaching from the outer system. It appears to be placing itself directly in our path. Zyreth felt a flash of irritation. Some fool was trying to delay the inevitable. Identify the vessel and destroy it immediately. The officer's claws trembled as she worked the controls. Admiral, the ship is broadcasting an identification signal. It is registered to a species called humans. The word hung in the air like poison. Every officer on the bridge stopped moving. Every conversation died in mid-sentence. Every eye turned toward the Admiral with expressions of sudden and unmistakable terror. Zyreth felt something cold crawl through his chest. Sensation he had not experienced in over 50 years of warfare. It took him a moment to recognize it as the first faint stirring of doubt. Humans, he repeated quietly. Are you certain? Yes, Admiral. The signal is authentic. There is no mistake. Commander Thale moved to the Admiral's side, his voice low and urgent. Admiral, perhaps we should pause our advance until we understand what we are dealing with. The reports about humanity are— I know what the reports say, Zyreth interrupted sharply. Rumors and exaggerations from conquered peoples trying to frighten us with ghost stories. Humanity is a single-system species with no significant military presence. They are not a threat to the Corvani Dominion, but even as he spoke the words, he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. And when he looked at his crew, he could see that they did not believe him. The tactical display updated, showing the approaching human vessel. It was small, barely larger than a Corvani shuttle. It carried no visible weapons, no escort ships. Nothing that should have caused concern to anyone, and yet the entire bridge had fallen into terrified silence. As if death itself had just announced its arrival, Admiral. The communications officer whispered, "The human vessel is hailing us. They wish to speak with you directly." Zyreth stared at the display for a long moment. His claws tightened around the armrest of his command throne. His hearts beat faster than they had in decades. 12,000 warships, the mightiest force ever assembled in galactic history, had stopped moving, and one human was waiting to speak with him. The view screen flickered to life, and Admiral Zyreth found himself staring at a creature that should not have frightened him at all. She was small by Corvani standards, with soft skin that had no scales or armor to protect it. Her body looked fragile, almost delicate, with only 2 arms and 2 legs, and a face that seemed entirely too expressive for a warrior. She sat alone in a modest cockpit that was filled with personal items, photographs. A small plant, a cup of some steaming liquid that she held in one hand. She wore no uniform, no armor, nothing that identified her as military. She looked like a civilian, like someone who had accidentally wandered into the wrong part of the galaxy and was about to apologize for the confusion. And yet, when her eyes met his through the view screen, Admiral Zyreth felt his blood turn cold. There was no fear in those eyes. There was no anger, no aggression, no desperate courage. There was only a calm and patient certainty that seemed to say she already knew exactly how this encounter would end. "My name is Elena Chun," she said, her voice steady and unhurried. "I represent Earth and the human species. I have been authorized to deliver a message to your fleet." Zyreth forced himself to project confidence, to show no sign of the unease that was spreading through his crew like a disease. "You are one person in one ship. You have no weapons, no fleet, nothing that could possibly threaten us. The Corvani Dominion does not negotiate with insects." Elena took a slow sip from her cup before responding. "I am not here to negotiate. I am here to inform you that the Althean system is under human protection. You need to turn your fleet around and leave." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the bridge. Commander Thale stepped forward, his voice sharp with what he hoped sounded like contempt. "Protection? You claim to protect an entire star system. With what army? With what weapons? We have scanned your vessel. It does not even have basic defensive capabilities." "That is correct," Elena agreed calmly. "My ship is unarmed. I am a schoolteacher, not a soldier. I was visiting the Althean homeworld when your fleet was detected, and there was not enough time to send anyone else. So I volunteered to come out here and speak with you. A schoolteacher, Zyrveth repeated slowly. You expect me to believe that humanity sent a schoolteacher to stop the greatest armada in galactic history? I do not expect you to believe anything. I expect you to make a decision based on the information available to you. And I suspect you already have quite a lot of information about what happens to those who ignore human warnings. The Admiral's claws scraped against his throne. She was right, of course. Every species in the galaxy had heard the stories about humanity. Every intelligence agency had compiled reports about their seemingly impossible victories and their terrifying willingness to respond to any threat with overwhelming and permanent force. Bring up everything we have on the humans, Zyreth ordered quietly. Everything classified, everything rumored, everything we have ever learned about them. Commander Thale moved to a secure terminal and began accessing files that were normally restricted to the highest levels of Dominion intelligence. As he read through the data, his scales grew paler and paler, until he looked almost white with fear. Admiral, he said in a voice barely above a whisper, perhaps we should review this information before making any decisions. Read it aloud, Zyrveth commanded. Let the crew hear what we are supposedly facing. Thale hesitated for a moment, then began to speak in a hollow tone. First contact with humanity occurred 40 cycles ago when a Corvani scout ship encountered one of their exploration vessels. Our ship attempted to capture theirs for study. The human vessel self-destructed rather than allow itself to be taken. But before it was destroyed, it transmitted a single message back to Earth. Continue. 3 weeks later, every Corvani vessel within 4 light-years of human space simultaneously experienced catastrophic system failures. Navigation, weapons, life support, everything failed at exactly the same moment. 17 ships were lost with all hands. We never determined how the humans accomplished this attack. We never found any evidence of infiltration or sabotage. It simply happened, as if by magic. Elena watched through the view screen with an expression of mild interest, as if she was listening to a moderately entertaining story that she had heard many times before. The Dominion classified the incident and avoided human space. Thale continued. But other species were not so fortunate. The Vrethki swarm attempted to raid a human colony world approximately 30 cycles ago. They sent 14 billion warriors, the largest invasion force their species had ever assembled. What happened? One of the younger officers asked, his voice trembling. The humans did not send a fleet to defend their colony. Instead, they calculated the trajectory of a moon orbiting a nearby gas giant. They altered its orbit using methods we still do not understand. 32 hours after the Vrethki began their invasion, the moon impacted the planet's surface at approximately 40 kilometers per second. The bridge was utterly silent. The Vrethki were annihilated, Thale said quietly. Every single one of them. The humans evacuated their own colonists before the impact, but they made no attempt to warn the invaders. 14 billion Vrethki died in less than a second. Their species is now extinct. Elena took another sip of her drink. That was before my time, but I understand it was considered a proportionate response. The Vrethki had killed approximately 12,000 human colonists before the evacuation was complete. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. Humanity simply removes problems. Admiral Zyrveth stared at the small human woman on his view screen. She was not threatening him. She was not boasting or posturing. She was simply stating facts in the same tone she might use to discuss the weather or the price of groceries, and that was what frightened him most of all. You cannot expect us to believe that one schoolteacher can stop an armada, he said slowly. I do not. "Need to stop you," Elena replied. "I only need to survive long enough to send a signal. My ship is equipped with a quantum-entangled communication beacon. If my heartbeat stops, or if I choose to activate it manually, Earth will know exactly what happened here and exactly who is responsible." She paused and looked directly into his eyes. "Admiral, I am not here to fight you. I am here to give you a choice. You can turn around and leave, and this will all be over. Or you can proceed with your attack, kill me and the Altheans, and then wait to discover what humanity considers an appropriate response." The silence stretched on and on, broken only by the quiet hum of the ship's systems and the ragged breathing of terrified officers. Admiral Zyrveth had conquered 47 worlds, and now he did not know what to do. Commander Thale continued reading from the classified intelligence files, and with each word, the fear on the bridge grew deeper and more suffocating. "The Machine Collective," he said, his voice hollow and distant. "They were an artificial intelligence civilization that had existed for approximately 10 million years. They controlled over 2,000 star systems and were considered the most technologically advanced species in the known galaxy." Admiral Zyrveth remembered the Machine Collective. The Dominion had always avoided their territory, recognizing that their digital minds were too fast and too numerous to defeat in conventional warfare. Even the Corvani had limits to their ambition. What happened to them? The Admiral asked, though he already suspected he did not want to know. Approximately 25 cycles ago, the Machine Collective attempted to infiltrate human computer networks. Their goal was to gather intelligence and establish backdoors for future use. They were careful and methodical. They routed their intrusion through 17 different relay stations across 12 systems. They believed they were undetectable. Thale paused to take a steadying breath. The humans traced the intrusion back through every single relay station in less than 4 hours. They identified the source as the Collective's central processing hub, a station the size of a small moon that contained the core consciousness of their entire civilization on the viewscreen. Elena Chun sat quietly, watching the Corvani officers learn about her species. She showed no pride, no satisfaction, nothing that suggested she was enjoying their growing terror. She simply waited. The humans uploaded something into the central hub. Thale continued. "We do not know what it was. Some analysts believe it was a virus. Others think it was something more sophisticated, perhaps a logical paradox or a recursive algorithm, designed to cause catastrophic failure. Whatever it was, it worked. Define worked. The Machine Collective stopped. Every artificial mind in their civilization ceased functioning at exactly the same moment. 2,000 star systems full of robots and computers and digital consciousnesses simply went silent. There were no survivors. There was no warning. One moment the Collective was the most powerful technological force in the galaxy, and the next moment they were archaeological ruins drifting through empty space. A young officer made a sound that might have been a sob. Another pressed his claws against his face, as if trying to block out the words he was hearing. "The humans never announced what they had done," Thale said. "They never claimed responsibility or explained their methods. They simply returned to their normal activities as if nothing had happened. The only evidence of their involvement was a single transmission detected by a Corvani listening post, a human voice saying 4 words. 'Do not touch us.' Admiral Zyrveth felt the weight of those words pressing down on him. Do not touch us. Such a simple warning, and yet it carried the weight of 2 extinct civilizations behind it. There is one more incident I believe is relevant, Thale said quietly. The Dorvani Empire, approximately 15 cycles ago. The Admiral remembered the Dorvani. They had been a proud and ancient civilization, rivals of the Corvani for centuries. Their empire had spanned hundreds of star systems, and their military had been considered second only to the Dominion itself. The Dorvani captured 3 human researchers who were studying an anomaly near the border of human space. They believed the humans possessed technology that could be valuable, so they took them prisoner for interrogation. It was a relatively minor incident, the kind of territorial dispute that happens constantly between spacefaring civilizations. What did the humans do? Zyvrith asked, dreading the answer. They did not send a fleet. They did not issue threats or demands. They did not even respond to diplomatic inquiries from the Dorvani government. Instead, they sent a single ship with a single operative. Thale's voice dropped to barely a whisper. We do not know what happened next. The details were never revealed, and the Dorvani refused to discuss it. What we do know is that 30 cycles after the operative arrived, the Dorvani Emperor personally returned all 3 human researchers unharmed. He issued a formal apology for the inconvenience caused to the human species, and then he signed documents dissolving his own empire. Dissolving his own empire? The weapons officer repeated in disbelief. Every territory the Dorvani controlled was surrendered. Every fleet was dismantled. Every military installation was decommissioned. The Emperor himself went into voluntary exile and was never seen again. An empire that had existed for 4,000 years simply ended because one human operative spent 30 days doing something we cannot even imagine. The bridge had become a tomb of silence. Every officer stared at their stations with empty eyes, their minds struggling to process what they had heard. The Kovani had always believed they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Now they understood they were children playing with toys while adults walked among the stars. Althea finally spoke, her voice gentle and almost kind. I know what you are thinking. You are wondering if these stories are exaggerations, if perhaps the truth is less frightening than the rumors. I want you to understand something important. She leaned forward slightly, and her eyes seemed to look directly into the Admiral's soul. Every story you have heard about humanity is true, and there are hundreds of stories you have not heard. Classified incidents that make the Vrethki and the Machine Collective look like minor inconveniences. We do not conquer. We do not expand. We do not seek power or territory or glory. We simply exist in our corner of the galaxy and ask to be left alone. Her voice hardened slightly. But when someone refuses to leave us alone, when someone threatens what we have decided to protect, we respond with everything we have. Not proportionally, not reasonably, not with any consideration for what the galaxy might think of us. We simply identify the problem and eliminate it completely. Because we learned long ago that half measures only invite more attacks. Admiral Zyvrith looked at the tactical display, at his 12,000 warships waiting for orders, at the beautiful blue-green planet that should have been an easy conquest. And for the first time in his long career, he understood what it meant to face an enemy who could not be intimidated, could not be negotiated with, could not be defeated by any conventional means. Why? He asked quietly. Why do you protect the Altheans? They are not your species. They are not even your allies. What possible reason could you have to risk war with the Dominion for their sake? Althea smiled, a small, sad expression that somehow made her seem more human than anything else she had done. Because they asked us to. Because they were afraid and alone, and they reached out for help. And because humanity does not abandon those who trust us. She took another sip of her drink. That is all the reason we need. Admiral Zyvrith stared at the human woman on his view screen for a long, terrible moment. Part of him wanted to give the order to fire, to watch her tiny ship disappear in a flash of light and prove that the Corvani Dominion feared nothing and no one. But another part of him, a part that had kept him alive through 50 years of warfare, whispered that some battles were not meant to be fought. You are asking me to retreat, he said slowly, to turn around and abandon our mission because one human told us to. Do you understand what that would mean for me? For the Dominion? Althea nodded. I understand perfectly. You have built your entire civilization on conquest and strength. Showing any sign of weakness could undermine everything you have achieved. Other species might begin to resist. Conquered worlds might rebel. Your entire empire could crumble because you chose to walk away from one battle. Then you understand why I cannot retreat. I understand why you believe you cannot retreat. But I also understand what will happen if you proceed. She set down her cup and folded her hands in her lap. Admiral, let me be very clear about something. I am not bluffing. I am not negotiating. I am not trying to trick you into making a mistake. I am simply telling you the truth about what will happen next. The tactical display continued to show her tiny ship floating between the Armada and the Althean homeworld. She looked so small, so fragile, so utterly insignificant compared to the weapons of mass destruction surrounding her. If you attack, you will certainly win today's battle. My ship has no weapons, and the Althean defenses will not slow you down for more than a few minutes. You will conquer their world, enslave their people, and add another victory to your long list of conquests. And why should I hesitate? Because tomorrow, Earth will receive my signal. And the day after that, humanity will begin calculating an appropriate response. Not a proportional response. We do not believe in proportion. We believe in finality. We believe in making absolutely certain that no one ever threatens us or our protectorates again. She paused, letting her words sink in. Admiral, I want you to think very carefully about the Vrethki. They were a species that had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had armies numbering in the billions. They believed they were invincible. And now, they are a footnote in galactic history, a cautionary tale that parents tell their children about what happens when you anger the wrong species. Zyvreth's claws tightened on his command throne. You cannot destroy the entire Corvani Dominion. We control over 300 star systems. Our population numbers in the trillions. Even humanity cannot eliminate us completely. Are you certain of that? Elena asked quietly. Are you willing to bet everything your empire, your species, your entire civilization on the assumption that you understand the limits of human capability? Because the Machine Collective made that assumption. The Dorvani made that assumption. And both of them discovered they were terribly, catastrophically wrong. The bridge crew watched in silence as their admiral struggled with a decision that should have been simple. They were warriors, trained from birth to fight and kill and conquer. Retreat was not supposed to be an option. Defeat was not supposed to be possible, but fear was a powerful teacher. And the lessons of the Vrethki and the Machine Collective were impossible to ignore. Commander Thale moved closer to the Admiral and spoke in a low voice that the view screen would not pick up. Admiral, perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. Not a retreat, but a strategic repositioning. We could claim we received intelligence about a threat elsewhere and needed to respond. No one would know the real reason. I would know, Zyvreth replied. And so would every officer on this bridge. The Dominion has never retreated from any enemy. If we run now, we admit that we are afraid. And fear is a weakness we cannot afford. With respect, Admiral, extinction is a weakness we cannot afford either. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Zyvreth looked around at his crew officers, who had served him loyally for decades. Warriors who had followed him into battle after battle without question or complaint. They were the best the Dominion had to offer, and they were all looking at him with the same expression. Please do not make us die for your pride. Elena spoke again, her voice softer now, almost gentle. Admiral, I know this is not an easy decision. I know your entire identity is built on being strong and fearless and unstoppable. But I want you to understand something about humanity. What is that? We do not enjoy destruction. We do not take pleasure in erasing civilizations or ending species. Every time we have been forced to respond to a threat, it has been a tragedy, not just for our enemies, but for us as well. We carry the weight of those deaths with us, even when we know they were necessary. She paused, and for just a moment, her calm facade cracked slightly. Ziveth could see exhaustion in her eyes and sadness, and something that looked almost like hope. I do not want to be the reason your species dies. I do not want to send a signal that will set in motion events that cannot be stopped. I am a schoolteacher. I spend my days helping children learn to read and write and understand the universe. I never wanted to be responsible for the fate of civilizations. Then why are you here? Because someone had to be. Because the Altheans are good people who deserve to live in peace. Because humanity made a promise, and we keep our promises even when it costs us everything. She met his eyes through the view screen, and her voice was barely above a whisper. Please, Admiral. I am asking you, not demanding, not threatening. Just asking. Please turn around and go home. Let this be the day when two civilizations chose peace instead of destruction. Let this be the moment when everything changes. Zirveth felt something he had not experienced in 50 years of warfare. He felt the weight of choice pressing down on him, the terrible responsibility of holding the future in his claws. He could destroy the Altheans and prove that the Dominion feared nothing. Or he could retreat and prove that even the mightiest empire could learn wisdom. The tactical display blinked quietly. Waiting for orders, the crew held their breath. Waiting for a decision, and somewhere in the distance, the Althean homeworld continued to spin. Its billions of inhabitants, unaware that their entire existence depended on what one admiral chose to do next. 3 standard hours passed in absolute silence. Admiral Zyrveth sat motionless on his command throne, staring at the view screen where Elena Chun waited with infinite patience. His crew had stopped pretending to work in their stations. They simply watched their leader and waited for a decision that would determine whether they lived or died. The tactical display showed the same information it had shown for hours. 12,000 warships, 1 unarmed human vessel, and a beautiful blue-green planet that hung in the distance like a jewel waiting to be claimed. Zyrveth thought about everything he had accomplished in his long career. 47 worlds conquered, billions of enemies crushed beneath his heel, an empire expanded to the farthest reaches of known space. He had built a legacy that would be remembered for centuries. A monument to Corvani power that seemed absolutely unshakable. And now one human woman was asking him to throw it all away. He thought about the Vrethki, who had believed their numbers made them invincible. He thought about the Machine Collective, who had believed their technology made them untouchable. He thought about the Darvani Emperor, who had believed his ancient empire would last forever. All of them had been wrong. All of them had underestimated humanity. All of them were gone. Admiral, Commander Thale said quietly, "Whatever you decide, I will support you. If you order the attack, I will lead the first wave. If you order the retreat, I will ensure the fleet follows without question. But you must make a decision. We cannot stay here forever." Zyreth looked at his second-in-command, warrior who had served him faithfully for 20 years, who had never shown fear in any battle, who would follow him into the depths of space itself without hesitation. And he realized that he did not want to be responsible for Thale's death. He did not want to be responsible for any of their deaths. "Open a channel to the human vessel," the Admiral ordered. His voice rough with emotion, he could not quite hide Ilana's face, appeared on the view screen once again. She looked tired, exhausted. Really, but her eyes still held that same patient certainty that had unnerved him from the beginning. "Have you made your decision?" She asked, simply. "I have questions first." "Ask them." Zyreth leaned forward in his throne. "If we retreat today, what guarantee do I have that humanity will not interfere with Corvani operations elsewhere? What stops you from declaring every system in the galaxy under your protection and demanding that we simply stop existing?" Elena shook her head slowly. "That is not how we operate. Humanity has no interest in conquest or empire building. We have our own corner of the galaxy, and we are content to stay there. The only reason we protect others is because they ask for our help and because we believe they deserve to live in peace. The Altheans asked for your protection? They did. Approximately 1 year ago, when they first detected your fleet gathering near their borders. They reached out to us through diplomatic channels and requested assistance. We agreed. Why? What do you gain from protecting them? Althea was silent for a moment, as if considering how to explain something very simple to someone who could not quite understand. We gain nothing except the knowledge that we did the right thing. Admiral, I know this is difficult for you to believe, but not every species is motivated by power and conquest. Some of us simply want to help others because it makes the universe a slightly better place. Zirveth stared at her. You are very strange creatures. I know. Most species tell us that. The Admiral fell silent again, wrestling with a decision that went against everything he had ever been taught. The Corvani Dominion did not retreat. The Corvani Dominion did not show weakness. The Corvani Dominion crushed all who stood before it. But the Corvani Dominion had never faced an enemy like humanity before. If I order my fleet to withdraw, he said slowly, what happens to the Altheans? Do they simply continue as before? Yes. They will continue their peaceful existence, building their libraries and hospitals and schools. They will never threaten you or anyone else. They will simply exist as they have always existed, causing no harm to anyone. And humanity? We will return to our own affairs. We will not pursue you or seek revenge for this incident. We will not even discuss it publicly, unless you choose to make it public first. As far as we are concerned, this entire encounter will never have happened. Zirveth looked around at his bridge crew one final time. He saw relief in their eyes, hope struggling against years of military conditioning. They wanted to live, and they were silently begging him to give them permission to do so. The Admiral made his decision. All ships, he announced in a voice that echoed across the command bridge. Reverse course immediately. We are returning to Dominion space. This mission is cancelled. A ripple of shock passed through the crew, followed quickly by barely concealed relief. Officers began issuing orders, and the massive fleet slowly began to turn away from the Althean system. Althea closed her eyes for a moment, and Zirveth saw something he had not expected, genuine gratitude, mixed with exhaustion so deep it seemed to reach into her bones. Thank you, Admiral, she said quietly. You have saved more lives today than you will ever know, including many of your own people. I have not done this for you, Zirveth replied. I have done this for my crew and for my species. But I want you to understand something, human. What is that? This is not over. Someday, somehow, the Dominion will find a way to challenge humanity. We will not accept being second to anyone forever. Althea nodded slowly. I would expect nothing less. But when that day comes, I hope we can find a way to resolve our differences without destroying each other. Perhaps? Perhaps not. The future is uncertain. Yes, Althea agreed. But today is not. Today, we chose peace. And that is enough. The view screen flickered off as the fleet continued its retreat. 12,000 warships, the mightiest force ever assembled in galactic history, crawled back toward the hyperspace threshold like a wounded beast that had decided some prey was simply not worth the hunt. When the last Corvani ship disappeared into hyperspace, Althea Chun finally allowed herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her cup. Her heart was pounding so fast she thought it might burst. Tears were streaming down her face, and she could not even try to stop them. She opened a communication channel to the Althean homeworld. They are gone, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. The fleet has withdrawn. You are safe, on the planet below. Billions of beings erupted in celebration that could be seen from orbit lights flashing, ships launching in joy. An entire world rejoicing because they had been given the chance to continue existing. Elena Chun, 34 years old, primary school teacher from Vancouver, Canada, sat alone in her tiny ship and cried with relief. She had faced the deadliest fleet in the galaxy with nothing but words and reputation. And somehow, impossibly, she had won when she finally stopped shaking. She set a course for the nearest station. All she wanted now was a decent cup of tea and a chance to call her mother. She had quite a story to tell.